Listen before your brain sprints to the worst conclusion. Pause. I know exactly what's happening inside your head right now. You saw something. A photo. A smile. Maybe someone new standing a little too close. And instantly your chest tightened. Your mind started racing. You told yourself it's over, she's gone, she's happy without you. But here's what you're missing. You're watching a 3-second clip and calling it the full movie. You're reading one page and assuming you know the ending. That's not insight. That's panic disguised as logic. Social media isn't truth. It's theater. It's performance. It's carefully selected moments designed to project a specific image. People curate strength, not confusion. They showcase joy, not the moments when old memories crash into them unexpectedly. Nobody posts their doubts. Nobody shares the nights where they catch themselves reaching for their phone to text you. They post the highlight reel. The polished version. The controlled narrative. When you assume that filtered image equals complete emotional closure, you're writing a story with missing pages. You're filling in blanks that might be empty, or completely different than you imagine. Here's what most people miss about post-breakup energy. There's usually a surge. New faces appear. New routines emerge. New validation floods in. It feels empowering. It looks like progress. It resembles healing. But activity isn't healing. Motion isn't peace. Noise isn't resolution. Sometimes what resembles moving forward is just running sideways to avoid standing still. Distraction wears a convincing mask. It's easier to stay busy than sit with emptiness. It's simpler to collect new attention than process old attachment. It's safer to appear unbothered than admit you're still figuring things out internally. So before you conclude she's emotionally finished, consider this. Outward momentum rarely reflects inward resolution. You're watching the surface while the depths remain completely invisible to you. You don't know what happens when her phone goes dark and silence fills the room. You don't know which memories echo in those quiet hours. You don't know what thoughts she pushes away each morning before facing the day. You're basing permanent conclusions on temporary glimpses. And that's dangerous territory for your peace of mind. Snapshots rarely tell the whole emotional story. What you're seeing is a carefully constructed moment. Not the full picture. Not the internal reality. Not the quiet struggles that happen when nobody's watching. She could be thriving. She could be drowning. She could be somewhere in between. The truth is you don't actually know. And pretending you do based on a few images will only drive you crazy. Your mind wants certainty. It craves answers. But sometimes the honest answer is uncertainty. And learning to move forward without knowing everything is where real strength begins. Here's the part that'll mess with your head if you let it. Sometimes the fastest movers are the ones proving something. Not to you. To themselves. They're demonstrating independence. Showcasing resilience. Broadcasting that the ending didn't destroy them. But performing strength and possessing it aren't identical twins. One's for the audience. The other lives quietly inside where nobody can see it. There's an ego component nobody talks about. If she suspects you're watching, the happiness might get amplified. Not maliciously. Not even consciously sometimes. But nobody wants to appear broken after separation. Everyone wants to project that they landed on their feet. That life continued smoothly. That they're thriving without missing a beat. Here's something deeper that most miss entirely. People often move forward physically while still carrying emotional baggage. They enter new situations with old attachments still packed away in hidden corners. That doesn't mean they want to reverse course. But it proves healing isn't a straight line. It curves unexpectedly. It doubles back without warning. It takes detours nobody anticipated. Sometimes people rush into new connections specifically to avoid processing old ones. The new person becomes a shield against reflection. Fresh attention becomes medication for old wounds. But medication isn't cure. It's temporary relief that wears off eventually. And let's address the real question underneath all this analysis. Why does her timeline matter so intensely to you right now? Because if your inner peace depends on tracking her emotional journey, you're still chained to her. That invisible attachment keeps you suspended in mental purgatory. Unable to move backward. Unable to move forward. Just stuck. Whether she processed everything yesterday or she's still quietly working through it months from now, your assignment remains unchanged. Build yourself relentlessly. Focus inward completely. Strengthen your foundation daily. Because the man who stays grounded doesn't need to decode every external signal to keep moving forward with purpose. Your growth can't wait for confirmation about her feelings. Your progress isn't on hold pending her emotional update. You don't need her permission to evolve. Think about what you're actually doing. You're pausing your entire life waiting for information that changes nothing about your path. Even if you knew exactly how she felt right now, what would you do differently tomorrow morning? The answer reveals everything. If knowing her emotional state would change your actions, you're still operating from reaction instead of intention. You're still letting her invisible presence dictate your visible choices. That's not strength. That's dependency wearing a different mask. Real power comes from moving forward regardless. From building regardless. From improving regardless of what she posts. Regardless of who she's with. Regardless of how quickly she appears to recover. Your life continues either way. The only question is whether you continue with it. This is where most guys completely derail themselves. They start measuring timelines obsessively. She's already out there meeting people and I'm still putting myself back together. That proves she never actually cared about any of it. But emotional velocity doesn't equal emotional depth. Some people process pain in slow private increments behind closed doors. Others sprint away from discomfort at full speed hoping distance creates healing. Fast movement doesn't automatically signal shallow feelings. Sometimes it just reveals low tolerance for stillness. Low tolerance for sitting with uncomfortable emotions. Low tolerance for facing what actually happened. Public behavior is often strategic even when it's completely unconscious. If she knows there's a chance you'll see it, she might be reinforcing a specific narrative. Not to wound you deliberately, but to protect herself from appearing weak. To demonstrate strength publicly. To show progress visibly. To prove that existence continues normally. That doesn't make it dishonest. It just means presentation and internal processing are entirely separate experiences happening simultaneously. Here's another truth that stings initially. Sometimes people genuinely believe they're fine until silence arrives later unexpectedly. Healing moves in waves you can't predict. You feel powerful Tuesday morning and completely reflective Thursday night. You feel certain this afternoon and deeply nostalgic before midnight. What you're witnessing might just be one temporary phase. Not the final destination she's reached permanently. The danger of assumption works like this. Once you decide she's completely detached emotionally, your energy shifts into reaction mode automatically. You start posting differently hoping she notices. You change how you move publicly. You try competing with scenarios you've imagined in your head. That's when you lose your center entirely. Because now you're responding to fiction you created. Not facts that actually exist. There's also the validation component nobody discusses honestly. New attention feels therapeutic after separation ends. Fresh interest temporarily boosts shattered confidence. Validation can seem like medicine healing everything. But validation isn't connection. And connection isn't easily duplicated or replaced quickly. Before you equate new interactions with emotional replacement, remember this clearly. Attention fills empty time. It doesn't always fill emotional depth. Sometimes people move quickly specifically to avoid going backward accidentally. If they stay single too long, old emotions might resurface stronger than expected. Moving ahead rapidly becomes protective armor wrapped around their decision. It creates momentum that becomes harder to reverse daily. But here's your discipline requirement starting now. Her pace cannot dictate your self-worth anymore. The moment you interpret her speed as commentary on your value as a man, you hand her complete authority over your confidence. That's a dangerous transfer of power you cannot afford. She's living her life making her choices. You're over here letting those choices determine how you feel about yourself. That equation never balances in your favor. Pay attention to this because it changes everything you thought you understood. What looks like moving on is sometimes just emotional autopilot running on default settings. After separation ends, people fall back into familiar patterns without thinking. Increased socializing happens automatically. New conversations start filling empty hours. Constant activity creates the appearance of forward motion. But autopilot isn't awareness. It's movement without genuine reflection. And movement can camouflage tremendous amounts of unresolved feeling hiding underneath. You see photographs of her laughing and conclude she's completely unaffected by everything. But laughter doesn't erase memory permanently. Smiling doesn't equal detachment internally. Human beings are complex containers holding contradictory emotions simultaneously. We can miss someone deeply and still socialize normally. We can feel genuine nostalgia and still flirt casually. Emotional layers coexist without canceling each other out. Don't oversimplify what you can't fully observe from outside. Sometimes she's trying to convince herself she's moved on, not convince you, herself. When you commit to a difficult decision, especially one that costs something meaningful, you mentally double down on it. You lean into it completely. You perform it publicly. Because reversing it means admitting doubt existed. And doubt feels destabilizing when you're trying to stand firm. Here's something uncomfortable to consider honestly. Even if she has emotionally moved on, that doesn't render you irrelevant suddenly. Sometimes closure arrives faster for one person than another. That's painful to accept. But it's not a verdict on your worth as a man. It's just different processing speeds operating independently. The real danger emerges when you start reacting to assumptions about her feelings constantly. If you convince yourself she's completely over everything, you might begin proving yourself unnecessarily. Trying to showcase success aggressively. Attempting to trigger reactions desperately. Competing with imagined scenarios obsessively. The moment you compete with phantoms, you lose focus on actual progress happening in real time. Ask yourself this directly. If she has genuinely moved on, what does that change about your path forward? Does it alter your discipline tomorrow? Does it shift your goals next month? Does it transform your core values permanently? It shouldn't change anything. Your direction can't hinge on her emotional state anymore. There's tremendous power in being completely unreactive to outside noise. When you don't spiral over her apparent happiness publicly. When you don't monitor her status like checking a scoreboard. When you refuse comparing healing timelines obsessively. That calmness constructs internal strength gradually. Sometimes people move on faster when relationships felt heavy consistently. Not because feelings weren't real, but because ending brought unexpected relief finally. Relief can accelerate emotional closure dramatically. That doesn't negate love that existed previously. It just means peace eventually outweighed attachment. Your interpretation isn't reality. It's just your current perspective filtered through pain. Remember that distinction always. Here's what nobody wants to admit but everyone experiences silently. Sometimes you assume she's thriving because you're struggling internally. Your pain amplifies her appearance of stability dramatically. When you're uncomfortable, everyone else seems completely unaffected by life. But perception isn't proof of anything. Your internal state is coloring your interpretation of her external presentation constantly. You're watching through a lens smeared with your own hurt. The real battle isn't between you and her anymore. It's between you and your assumptions running wild. Between your imagination creating stories and your discipline trying to stay grounded. If you win that internal battle daily. If you stop constructing emotional narratives without solid evidence. You reclaim control over your own mind finally. And control over your own story is infinitely more powerful than trying to decode hers obsessively. Sometimes you secretly want her to have moved on quickly. Not because you're genuinely okay with it, but because it makes the pain cleaner somehow. If she's fully done, there's no ambiguity torturing you. No what ifs keeping you awake. Finality feels easier than endless uncertainty. But reality is usually messier than clean endings. People don't just switch off emotions overnight. They compartmentalize things. They suppress feelings. They redirect energy elsewhere. That doesn't mean they're secretly planning to return someday. It just means emotions don't operate on clean, predictable timelines ever. There's also the possibility that she's genuinely attempting to rewrite her entire identity now. After an intense relationship ends, people redefine themselves completely. New habits form quickly. New circles develop unexpectedly. New energy emerges from somewhere. That reinvention can resemble detachment from outside. But reinvention is sometimes about distraction, not closure. You don't know which stage she's actually inhabiting currently. And guessing endlessly won't deliver peace regardless. Sometimes when someone appears fine publicly, it's because they processed separation internally long before it officially ended. If she detached emotionally before that final conversation, her recovery looks dramatically faster. That's difficult to swallow completely. But it doesn't invalidate your experience at all. It just means your timelines weren't synchronized properly. Guard yourself against ego reactions constantly. When you see her smiling genuinely, progressing visibly, talking to someone new openly, your pride might ignite immediately. You might feel completely replaceable, entirely disposable. But someone moving forward doesn't erase what you meant during that chapter together. Replacement isn't replication ever. Nobody steps into your exact role and becomes you perfectly. Sometimes what hurts most isn't that she moved on eventually. It's that she appears totally unbothered publicly. You expected visible grief somewhere. Public reflection somehow. Some sign that everything mattered deeply to her. But not everyone mourns publicly or dramatically. Expecting visible sadness as proof of impact traps you in endless comparison. You deserve better than waiting for her tears to validate your worth. This is where everything changes if you let it happen naturally. The more you analyze her progress obsessively, the less you focus on your own development daily. Every minute spent decoding her timeline is a minute not invested in strengthening yourself deliberately. Strength grows quietly in the background. It doesn't grow in speculation or obsessive monitoring. It grows in discipline practiced consistently. It grows in focused attention directed inward. Sometimes you project your attachment onto her unconsciously. If you're thinking about her daily, you assume she must be doing the same automatically. But emotional intensity doesn't mirror between two people. Two individuals can experience identical breakups completely differently. Your sleepless nights don't guarantee hers. Your constant thoughts don't mean she's thinking too. That's a hard pill to swallow, but necessary medicine. Even if she truly feels free and fully detached right now, that doesn't mean you lost anything. It means the chapter closed for her differently than you. Closure isn't a competition between former lovers. It's not about who moves faster publicly. It's about who grows stronger internally. The most dangerous mindset sounds like this. If she's moved on already, I need to catch up immediately. That creates urgency rooted entirely in insecurity. You don't rush healing ever. You don't compete with someone else's pace desperately. You move deliberately instead. You move with clear intention always. You build stability from the inside outward. Whether she's emotionally done or still processing quietly somewhere becomes irrelevant to the man you're actively becoming. Your power returns the moment you stop watching her to measure your worth constantly. When your self-respect isn't tied to her timeline anymore, you step out of reaction mode completely. You step into control finally. And control over yourself is the only victory that actually lasts permanently. Sometimes you don't actually want to know the truth about whether she's moved on genuinely. Because if she has, that forces you to release hope completely. And hope, even painful hope, feels safer than accepting finality. So you stay stuck in analysis mode indefinitely. You watch her moves carefully. You decode posts searching for meaning. You scan for clues obsessively. But clarity doesn't come from stalking patterns online. It comes from accepting uncertainty fully and choosing to move anyway. Sometimes you're not reacting to her progress at all. You're reacting to your own deep insecurity surfacing. Seeing her smile somewhere else triggers feelings of inadequacy immediately. Was I not enough for her? Did I lose to someone better? But relationships aren't math equations with clear answers. They're compatibility equations with complex variables. Someone else fitting her doesn't mean you failed at anything. Different doesn't mean better or worse. It just means different. Your worth isn't determined by whether you were her final destination. Some people are chapters. Make peace with that truth. Now we reach the point where real freedom begins unexpectedly. One day you wake up and realize you haven't checked her page in weeks. Not because you forced yourself painfully. Not because you're pretending successfully. But because your mind simply stopped caring naturally. That's when you understand something powerful about yourself. Healing isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet and subtle. It sneaks up on you without announcement. Your thoughts shift direction gradually. Instead of wondering who she's with tonight, you're thinking about your next move tomorrow. Instead of replaying old memories repeatedly, you're building new ones actively. Instead of imagining conversations that never happened, you're having real ones with people standing in front of you. That's when your energy returns to you completely. Detachment isn't forgetting what happened between you. It's accepting what happened fully. You may still remember the good moments fondly. You may still respect what you shared together. But the emotional grip loosens considerably. The memories become neutral instead of heavy. And neutrality is freedom finally. Once you stop measuring yourself against her timeline, your growth becomes authentic completely. You're not trying to catch up desperately. You're not trying to outshine her publicly. You're not trying to provoke any reaction whatsoever. You're simply becoming better because that's who you are now. And that kind of progress sticks permanently. You begin understanding that her emotional pace was never yours to control anyway. Whether she healed fast or slow doesn't matter. Whether she replaced you quickly or reflected quietly was her journey entirely. The moment you release responsibility for decoding it, you reclaim control of your own path. There's genuine strength in knowing you showed up honestly throughout. You loved without holding back. You invested without guarantees. If it didn't work, that doesn't erase your character at all. It just means alignment wasn't meant to be permanent. When you see it that way, regret starts fading naturally. Sometimes growth after separation builds a version of you that wouldn't even fit the old dynamic anymore. You become calmer under pressure, more disciplined with time, less reactive to provocations, more focused on what matters genuinely. You start realizing that even if she came back tomorrow, you wouldn't step into that same space unchanged. You stop romanticizing the past completely. You remember good times, yes, but you also remember friction clearly, incompatibility honestly, misalignment truthfully. That balanced perspective protects you from idealizing something that wasn't perfect ever. At this level, whether she moved on fast or slow becomes completely irrelevant background noise. You've moved forward fully, not because you forced yourself miserably, but because your focus returned home to you finally. When a man redirects his attention inward and builds from there patiently, no external timeline can shake him again ever. That's not recovery anymore. That's evolution into someone greater. If this hit different, if something inside you finally clicked, subscribe now. Because this journey isn't over yet. More truth is coming. More clarity is waiting. And the man you're becoming deserves to hear what's next. Hit that button. Stay locked in. Your evolution continues here.